Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly, high-energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting community, the acquisition community, and our industry partners get together to talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I am your host. And I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, my colleague, my partner, and my friend, Soraya Correa. Hello, Soraya.
Good day, Will. It's good to be with you. Another exciting episode. Let's do this.
Yes, absolutely. How are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Great.
Little sinus infection, but all good.
All good. All good. All good. Show must go on, right?
That's right. That's right. It's too important.
So, Soraya, we had kind of bounced around some ideas about kind of what's next, and one that I think hit both of us around the same time is talking about the next generation of contract specialists, and more importantly, what it takes, what think those building blocks, the experience of being a new contract specialist, and then kind of what the craft is demanding. What do you thought about that? What are your thoughts about that idea?
I think that's a great topic. You know that I'm always passionate about acquisition workforce, and acquisition workforce matters, whether it's the environment that they're working in, the tools that we're giving them, the resources that they have available to them, or how we even train them and how we engage them. So this is a great topic. I just want to warn you, I don't have opinions, and I'm always afraid to keep them to myself. And I also want to say that you're definitely going to have to watch the clock on this one, because I don't think we can tackle this in just one session. And I'm just excited by this topic. This is awesome. This is near and dear to my heart.
Good. So you want to get our disclaimer in, or are we free to go?
No. I got to get the disclaimer in, because we got to make sure any new listeners know what we're about.
Okay.
So our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions. But as you just heard, we probably will have a few of those. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. Over to you, Will.
Awesome. Well, Soraya, I first would just like to start off with kind of my background. I was a formal intern, if you will, the 3-year program, Con 100 classes, Con 200 classes, Con 300 classes. I know lately there have been some permutations of that, but that was a good experience for me, leaning into the activity and actually doing the work. Like many stories I have heard, I don't think I found contracting and acquisition. It found me. And from many perspectives, I think it was the thing that what I was put on this planet to do. I wonder, from your experience, what was your first foray into contracting, and then what did that experience look like for you?
Sure. So first of all, I'm not a child of intern program. I am the child of kind of building your own career, kind of figuring out the career ladder and climbing it up yourself and moving around and getting new experiences. Certainly, I got introduced to the profession by my father. He was in contracting, as I've mentioned before. And I came into the government looking for a job. I wasn't really thinking about a career in government, but I came in as a clerk typist, and I happened to work in a construction contracts division. And so I got to taste it. I mean, I got a real taste of it. And then I started going to school at night, and that's kind of what developed my interest, certainly hearing about it from my father, but also taking classes and learning about it. And so I kind of stumbled, I hate to say it that way, but I kind of stumbled through the training because you had to get certified. And in fact, I always like to tell the story that when I became the HCA at ICE, but for not having taken simplified acquisition, they were holding up my warrant. I'm like, really? So I made a pot of coffee at 4 o'clock in the morning, took the online course, that kind of thing, because it was just embarrassing, right? But that happens when you don't come in through, a good structured program, or when you don't have leaders that are paying attention to what's in your IDP, if you have an IDP, or who are like guiding your career path today. You probably shouldn't make that mistake, because there are like a ton of guides out there on what are the competencies, what are the courses, what's required for certification, et cetera. So I think we've come a long way from
Yeah.
where you and I started from. And I just adding in, and I am an advocate of intern programs, even though I didn't come up with one.
Sure.
I trained a lot of people that came through them. I worked with a lot of folks, and I like the structure and the discipline of an intern program.
Yeah, totally makes sense. But I love the story. I love your experience, because what that says is it doesn't matter how you start, or where you come from. If you have the piece parts, if you have the raw materials, and I think there are some raw materials that are just necessary to be effective in the craft. I think if you have the raw materials, you can be successful. One of the things I know, some of my contemporaries that I came up through the ranks with, some of them were big school graduates, small school graduates, procurement tech start, and then moving into the 1102, so 1106 to 1102, that model, all those work. So I'm just happy to hear that it's still that those models work. Now, I do like you said, I do believe it's become much more regimented now. Now they're looking for the college degree, they're looking for the 24 hours of business credits, but I still think those raw materials of the individual that's very attentive, kind of engaging, understands business, has a good economic sense, all of that stuff. And it's because I think the job is asking more. Okay, what do you think about that? Is it something different?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. So going back a little bit, I didn't mention that when I came up in the world that I'm in, the procurement side of the business, the acquisition side, I didn't get my degree till I was 15. I mean, I worked on it, intermittently, but a lot of my jobs required travel, and then of course life happens and those kinds of things. So I didn't get my degree till late in life. So I'm like the complete opposite of your average, probably 1102, and I just like stumbled and worked my way through. But also, I think a lot about people that don't have degrees, people who serve in our military, who've gone off to serve, or the spouses of military who are traveling around the world with their spouse, and they don't have an opportunity to get a degree, or they don't have the steady enough or the income, or whatever the reasons are. And so I think it is important. I believe in the 24 hours of business credit. I believe in having the degree, in a related field. I think we have to create opportunities for people to develop into that, right?
Absolutely.
And so, setting up programs that enable that, like we at DHS worked with the VA to create our Veterans to DHS program, to get people their 24 hours and help them get into the environment. I think that's extremely important, because here's the deal. Degrees do not teach you how to do things. Degrees teach you how to think. If you go to a good college, what they teach you is how to think. Hopefully, how to question things, right? How to interpret things, right? And so I think it's important that for the workforce that's coming in, especially given the challenges that we confront in our community, let alone across federal government and industry, I think it's important that we have these people with good thoughts, thinking. Supply chain is a classic example. A lot of people didn't think about the fact that your chief procurement officer is extremely important to your supply chain, right? They're doing the buying. They're going to tell you who the vendors are. They're going to tell you what the products are, right? That's a line of defense, right?
Yeah.
But people don't always think about it that way. And we need to be thinking about that more and more, because that impacts the training. That impacts how we develop our workforce. So it is changing. The demands are growing, and the perspective of that contract specialist, what they need to know, what they need to understand, who they need to engage with, I think that's changing dramatically, and it will continue to evolve.
Yeah, agreed. One of the things I'd like to add to that is I am constantly frustrated, and it's specifically every presidential election cycle where federal service becomes a political football. And when you talk about the ability to recruit those individuals and entice individuals to come join federal service, which I think is just a noble profession, it irks me every 4 years when we go through this this cycle of somehow the bureaucracy as a pejorative. It's
Right.
like that's the problem. If it wasn't for that, that's the problem. And I've always wrestled with, how do we then attempt after that to entice the younger and brighter and more mature and folks willing that are looking in the marketplace saying, where can I build a career? Where can I land well and then build a career? I've always just wondered, it's like, why do we do that? Why do we allow that to happen? Because it just frustrates me to no end, because it is that talent that we're in the marketplace competing for that talent.
Yeah, so somewhere along the line, I guess in politics, they decided that, like journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. So we'll tell the negative side of the story and forget all about the positive. One of the things that I encouraged, as I rose through the ranks and fell into leadership roles, and I started this like way back when, I said, we got to get out there and talk. People need to meet real people. Those figureheads that you sometimes see on television trying to talk about, notice I said trying to talk about
I heard
trying to talk about how the system really works, what we do, what we think about, and even how we handle things. They're not representative of who we are. The career civil servants, and I said this at my retirement ceremony, and I said every chance I get, I've worked alongside some of the most dedicated, hardworking individuals, talented, who really care. They're really passionate about the work on both industry, government, and on both sides of the house, by the way. And so when I see that, what my comment is, we the leaders, we the people that are doing the work, need to be out there talking more about what we do. That's why when we decided to do this, I said, this is a great idea. Let people hear from real people who actually did the work, not people who are selling a policy. I'm not selling a policy. I'm selling a profession. Right.
Yeah, agreed.
Right. And when I talk to people, I talk about, how wonderful this profession is. You can learn so much. It prepares you for a lot of other professions, believe it or not. You can expand into other areas. But here's the thing. When you work in federal government procurement, you will be making decisions that are impactful to the taxpayer, to the person who supports the taxpayer, who responds to them, but to the taxpayer. You don't always get to do that in industry, and I'm sure you've seen that as I just entered the consultancy world, and we get to tell people, we think blah blah blah. They get to make
yeah, I agreed, and you do it young. Youth, in early, let me say it that way. Early. That's probably the better way. Early in your career.
That's okay. You were calling me old. I got it.
No, not at all. But you have that opportunity to influence, to have significant influence and make decisions or support decision making very early in your career. And that's one of the things that I loved about it. It's like, in the mix, you're literally in the stew when decisions are being made. I can recall, because my first contracting assignment, or where I first started my career, I was in a systems command where, in DOD, we bought big stuff. And I can just imagine sometimes just being in the room, observing. That was an amazing opportunity. Because it allowed you to get close to the decision makers and the products, the goods and services, sometimes big goods and services that were being bought. And I think if I could consider this one of my building blocks of what's necessary, is to be effective young, or to be junior, is to know your missions, okay? That to get past being a writer of contracts, a creator of artifacts and paper, is like, that's not the job. That's not, it just so happens that we have to codify all the stuff that happens in our universe on paper. But the job is really being able to be an advocate for end users, advocate for programs, being a kind of mission centric. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is just to get in there, put your boots on, go see the stuff, touch it, watch it shoot, watch it roll. And you just like, oh, so this is what we're doing. So that was my experience. And I think it was critical. And I tried to replicate that throughout my career. Get out and touch stuff, be a part of the mission.
Partner with the program office. You're there to support them, to enable them, to deliver on that mission together. You write the contracts. I did mostly services contracts. I bought a couple of big things here and there, but I mostly was in the services arena. And we were there to get those services, delivered in the right way, with the right people, with the right talent, and at the right time to the right locations to support the mission. It is all about the mission. And in fact, I joked around with our interns because I used to go out and talk to each of our intern classes. Like I said, I'm passionate about workforce and I just love engaging with them. In fact, some of my leaders probably said, "You don't ever come to talk to me, but you talk to the workforce." Yeah, they're important. Anyway, but I always emphasize that side of the job. I said, we're not here to write contracts. That's not what we're about. We're here to deliver on a mission, to be a part of that mission execution piece. Yeah. It just so happens that the end product of what we deliver is a contract or an order or whatever, some kind of instrument, right? But what we are here to do is make sure that we're enabling that mission, helping them achieve their objectives, keeping them out of trouble, ensuring that they're using like the right funds and properly applying them, and structuring the contract in a way that enables them to deliver. And it's one of the things, when we talk about training, you raise a really good point about being in the room with the leadership. So when I started out, training was a little bit more classroom based. Well, it was pretty much classroom based because I'm older than dirt. So back then, training was classroom based. There wasn't things like online. And if you got cheat sheets, it's because you kind of created them yourselves.
Right.
Or you kept your training materials. Remember that? You put stickies all around your monitor and stuff. So anyway, training has evolved. And I'm glad to see that. I think training has evolved, and I think it continues to evolve. I'm excited by the talks, what DoD and DAU and FAI are talking about with respect to certification, where you'll get a certification and then you build credentials. Right. Because I think that's much more important than running around going to a 2-week or a 1-week class or a 1-day class, running around chasing a class that may or may not be available, or that you may or may not be able to afford from a budgetary standpoint.
It may not need
Right? I like the idea, and it was something that I pushed very hard at DHS, and I pushed even at other components that I worked at, is we got to get the training to the employee. And we got to get that training to them when they need it.
Yeah.
Not, 3 years before they ever do anything and they will have forgotten. Because by the way, if you teach me something, this is true, human nature, you teach me something, 3 weeks ago and I never use it, then I'm not going to remember it, right? I might, back in my mind, I might go, oh yeah, I did a training on that one time.
Right.
I like the just-in-time mentality, or at least having that ability. Let me teach you the core concepts. Let me teach you the basics you need to know. But let's make sure that there's training there for when you got to do your acquisition plans, or you got to do, your diversity and inclusion, your labor laws,
Sure.
Negotiating collective bargaining agreements, those kinds of things. You're not going to remember every labor law. If you never worked on services contracts, or if you only do an occasional service, you don't remember all those service contract act and all that stuff. But how about a nice training session, a half-hour quick hit that tells you what you need to know and then points you to the other things you need to know? That to me is the way training has been evolving. I'm happy to see that.
Yeah.
I think the pandemic drove more of that. I did my first CPO training symposium. I did it all online because pandemic hit. My staff said, well, why don't we postpone? I said, oh no, we're just going to flip this baby and see what happens. Worked out really well and people really appreciate it. So I do think that the training has to continue to evolve, because here's the thing. If you want great workers, you want to bring in great workers, then you've got to find that worker. You got to meet the worker where they are. Everybody's not going to always come to you because you're in competition with everybody else, including industry.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I have always believed that the most stellar contracts individuals are not recruited; they're made.
They're made. Exactly.
They're made. You get the raw material. You get as many of the raw materials as you can, and then you make them.
Build them. You build them. You develop them. You enable them. You teach them. You grow them, and you support them. And I'm always going to go back to that. Part of this leadership job is supporting them, right? And that sometimes even includes making decisions. And you and I chatted about this a little bit. I wasn't afraid to let people go out on detail opportunities to
Yeah,
other agencies and organizations, knowing that they could get recruited, they could, get the bug and want to stay over there. I
sure.
knew that that was a risk I was taking, but to me, it was well worth it because I was developing them for all of us, right? I was
Yeah.
developing them for our federal government
The
or for our
community.
industry. One way or another, I'm going to gain a benefit, right? Because
That's right.
that's just one more person out there who has the talent, the capabilities. But more importantly, what I used to tell my staff was, yeah, when we send them out there, there's two things that can happen. One is they come back a little bit smarter, a little bit more energized, ready to really hit the ground and appreciating us for helping
Right.
develop them. Or they stay over there, but they'll tell people how they got there.
Yeah,
They got there because they worked for people that trusted them and
absolutely.
enabled them and empowered them to go do something different.
Yeah,
So I'm a huge advocate of that. I'd love to see more, detailed opportunities moving people around, both within government and even detailed opportunities with industry and government.
sure. Oh yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Exchange
And
programs, I think, are good. Over.
absolutely. And I believe our community, while it is quite robust in the DC metro area, the DMV,
Mhm.
it's small. The
It is.
community, you see people again. I
Yeah.
usually tell the young people, don't piss anybody off because you will see them again somewhere. You will see them again. Our community in the DC metro area, that's our mecca. If you
Yeah.
will, that's our mecca. If you're going to deploy the craft, at some point you got to come to Mecca. Okay. And so
Mhm.
this is where the craft is deployed, but the community is so small. So from that,
Tiny,
yes. So from
tiny.
that perspective, it's like everybody's a friend. You can disagree, and we actually
Mhm.
want healthy disagreement, but don't tick people off because you will
That's
see them
right.
again. We'll see
Yeah,
them again.
I used to tell people, don't burn that bridge. You can light a match on it, but let's not set it on fire. Okay.
Right.
Um,
Agreed. Agreed.
you can light a match. It's okay to have, friendly disagreement and discourse and challenge one another. But at the end of the day, we're here to get a job done and we need to be working together. And by the way, everybody that you see on your way up, you're probably going to see them on your way down.
Absolutely.
You're probably going to trip over. I always remember I tell a story when DHS was first set up. I walked into a meeting, we were talking about strategic sourcing. And I walk into a meeting and I sit down and I look to my right, and here's a guy sitting next to me who I worked with at EPA. We were GS-13s together. He was now with one of the companies that was supporting us, and I was at the time in SES. And I'm like, whoa, small world. And that's the truth of it. And I
Yeah,
can't tell you how many times, colleagues of mine became senior procurement executives, HCAs. These were people that I trained with, people that we grew up together. We were GS-12s, 7s. It is a small world, it is a small community, and you're going to see each other on both sides of the house.
absolutely. It's a riot. I got one story. I got one story for you. I don't know if you know, but Tom Essig, who was the CPO at the time in DHS, where I was selected into the senior executive service, I was an intern on his team back in 1995 when he
Wow.
had just gotten selected to be a 15.
Yep. But
Small world.
very small world.
Small world.
And
Small
by
world.
the way, I joked around when we were, when people were organizing my retirement center, there were people working in divisions of mine there at DHS that had worked for me up to 28 years before. They had worked
Unbelievable.
with me or for me, or I was their customer. They were my contracting officer when I was at the program side. So that's why I tell people, treat people with decency and respect. And remember, at the end of the day, you have an argument, move on.
Move
Move
on.
on. Don't hold
Yeah.
grudges. First of all, it makes you old and cranky. And nobody wants to know that. But also, this is business. And we don't
Yeah.
always have
Agreed.
to agree, right? But what we have to find is to agree, how we agree to disagree and move on to get the job done. Because ultimately, this is what it's about. And that's one of the reasons that when people ask me, what are some of the traits I look for, in people, especially people coming into the profession? I want you to have really good critical thinking skills, right?
Oh.
I want you to be thoughtful, right? I want you to have good communication skill. I want you to feel comfortable. That doesn't mean you get up in front of a room of 1,000 people. You got to learn how to do that. But you get comfortable, at least in that one-on-one conversation, explaining your position, advocating for your views, uh, uh, delivering bad news as well as good news. Because a lot of people are really good at good news, they stink at bad news. You got to know how to do both. The courage to take a position and stand with that position and support it, but also recognizing the importance of loyalty and transparency. And what I mean by that is recognizing we all work for somebody. And so, somebody's got to make the decision, and then you got to decide. And as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, you charge for it and you own that decision if you're a part of the team. And then last but not least, and I'm going to put two words together, empathy and compassion. This job does require a lot of empathy and compassion. When you work especially in the federal space, you have to have an understanding of what are the challenges that we're addressing with these missions and why we do what we do and why it's important to do what we do, right? And by that I mean is you're not going to advocate for a particular policy position, but you have to understand the importance, the significance of what you're working on and understand what truly is urgent and what isn't. Sometimes I've heard contract specialists say, oh, they always say it's important. They always say that's urgent. Well, because it is, right? So you have to kind of understand the current events, the challenges that the programs confront to be able to adequately support them.
Yeah, those are awesome. I have three. I was jotting down too. Is kind of what I think are could be solid building blocks. The first is a bias to action. This is like starting. You'd be surprised. The big difference. There's a big difference between the two communities in our community. Those that take action and those that wait to be told what to do. That bias to action, I think, is a primary attribute, separates one tier from the next. The second is don't fear the math. Sometimes, our business it has a math component to it, or at least that the math can unlock additional value. So don't fear the math. The math can help you work through positions, ideas, concepts, the economics of it all. So don't fear the math. And then the third is really kind of a ownership of requirements. I'm a big believer of, I know the requirements belong to the program office, but I feel like the program offices belong to us. From an advocacy perspective, I think leaning into and owning what the mission is, making sure you're good at it. I remember when I was at ICE, we had a time where we were wrestling with our identity. Okay. And we were in a law enforcement organization, but the contracts team was, in my opinion, we were wrestling with our identity. And one of the things I shared with them, I said, look, we carry a badge and gun too. Just like the Leos. Ours just look a little different. That's all. They look like contracts, agreements, artifacts, pins. Yes. It just looks a little different. But in a law enforcement organization where carrying a gun is prestige and matters, we carry a gun and we have a badge too. Ours just looks a little different. And that's just having ownership of the stewardship. That's probably even a better word. Stewardship of the organization and stewardship of the mission. I think those are some building blocks that could be helpful for the next generation.
No, I agree. You're part of the team. It's a team. Look, I used to say this all the time. This is a team sport. If you're sitting in a corner trying to do this all by yourself, you're probably not going to be as good as when you're sitting with your program office, having that conversation, talking to your financial folks, talking to your IT folks. Today, almost everything we buy has an element of information technology in it. You can sit here and pretend that it doesn't. Good luck with that. Whether the company's using IT to store your data or to transact your data, or whether you're buying a system or an element of a system or a component, there is IT involved. Oh, and by the way, if none of that applies, how do we communicate, right? We have to secure these systems. So it's imperative that we understand that we in the procurement community, we don't have to be the expert at it. We have to know enough to know where to go to get the information, to know who to go talk to, and to ask the right questions and say, hey, IT, have you seen this? Can't tell how many times I sat in meetings, and in fact, that's why I started some of our advanced acquisition planning activities that I did at some lower thresholds to say, whoa, we got to get IT to the table. because I don't know that they've seen this thing.
Right.
And I know that we need certain cybersecurity clauses, or we need to put certain protections into this, because they're going to be capturing our data or tracking our data, or storing our data in their databases. So I think it's extremely important that folks understand that as we evolve, the profession has continued to evolve, and it's not that we're going to be the doer of that, but we have to know who needs to be at the table with the team helping us out. I think that's extremely important, but your points are very well taken. They're very valuable. And I agree. I like that bias to action. I just thought that was supposed to be natural. Right? I forgot that you're right. There are people waiting to be told what to do. I was always the person that used to go, slow down, girl.
Right.
Slow down. We want to tell you what to do.
That's so funny. So Soraya, we're at that time. We're approaching our time. I told you we have a problem on this one. You told me early. Shutting this one down. So we're at golden nugget time. Do you have a golden nugget for the community in this space when we're thinking about recruiting and then maturing and developing the next generation of contract professionals?
Yeah. So first of all, you said it best. Contract specialists are not born, they're made. But they have to have certain inherent qualities, characteristics, desires within them. And you got to look for that right person and then feed that, grow it. That's the way I like to talk about it. It's build that organic capability. I love, going out and talking to people that are thinking about the profession before they've even really made their mark, because I want to share with them, you need to know what you don't know. This is part of any profession. Know what you don't know. Know yourself, right? Know your profession, but know yourself as well. And know what brings you passion, what interests you, and then pursue that. And I think that's true for the contracting profession. But us as leaders, we got to find the right person with the right attitude and the right core skill sets to be in the profession, and then we develop them. And sometimes development means we got to let them go too.
Yeah, I get it. Yes. So mine, that's amazing. You make me want to get back into the fight. It's like, how can I get back in and get into some contracts? So my golden nugget is simply this, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I want to beat it for the community. We must honor public service. We gotta honor public. We gotta get out of this idea that somehow public service is a peg or two less than. We've got to honor public service and then honor the craft. The craft can take you anywhere you want to go, literally. And we have people in our shared background that have gone to the highest levels of government service, starting out as contract specialists and contracting officers. So,
exactly. So very proud of many of them.
Very proud. And
I'm with you.
I beat my chest all the time. It's like, yes, the community can take you. This craft can, if you honor it, lean in. This craft can take you anywhere you want to go. So we need to. I say this to the entire community. We should honor public service and then honor the craft.
Well, and you know what? You're right. And you know how the best way to honor it is? Let's get out here and talk about it. Let's talk about what we do, and let's tell the real stories. Don't let those one-offs where somebody did something dumb or something illegal or immoral or unethical. Don't let that be the story.
Be the narrative.
Because for that one person, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands. I would guess even maybe 1 million that are doing a great
amazing job.
I know I've done a lot of them. So yes, I'm with you. And it's always fun talking acquisition with you.
Absolutely. And with that, another one in the books. Thank you, Soraya. Another amazing episode. This one's near and dear to my heart. And I can tell after we got into it, we have some shared beliefs on this topic, creating, recruiting, identifying, recruiting, and then developing the next generation. Our country needs them. Our organizations need them. So I'm excited to have this conversation and can't wait for the next one.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity. See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.